right, thanks everyone for joining us for today's webinar, The Complete Guide to Building an Impactful Relationship with Your PR Agency. Today's session will be recorded and we'll be emailing out the on-demand version to everyone who's registered. Today, we're going to deep dive into the collaboration between in-house communications teams and their PR agency partners. And we'll be covering everything from hiring the right agency for your organization to building a productive ongoing relationship. Joining me today are two senior communications leaders and a PR agency executive. And they're going to share their perspectives, best practices, and examples of brand agency relationships that have worked, as well as ones that did not. So first, it's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed speakers. Bryan Pedersen is the Chief Digital Officer for MSL US. He spent over 15 years in the digital and innovation space across startups, agencies, and client side. His most recent roles include the digital practice lead and partner at Fleishman Hillard, leading consumer digital and influencer at MMK Plus, which is Omnicom's P&G agency, and launching the private equity-backed social marketing agency 3 Degrees. Bryan began his career in startups, an early employee at a handful of companies that went on to raise nearly $100 million. Bryan was named twice to PR Week's 25 Most Influential in Communications Technology. He was the co-author of Contemporary Issues in Digital Marketing, and he's even appeared on Good Morning America discussing influencer marketing trends. Welcome, Bryan. Oriana Branon is the Director of Corporate Communications at Bill.com. Oriana has 15 years of PR experience spanning B2B and B2C companies, and she currently leads corporate communications for Bill.com. But she started her career in public policy and nonprofit arena, brings a passion of community engagement and social impact to her corporate communications roles. She is a 2020 San Francisco Business Times 40 Under 40 winner, San Francisco Business Times 2019 Women of Influence, and a 2018 PR Week 40 Under 40 award recipient. Oriana has been featured in Forbes and Latina Style for being a pioneering Latina and has written personal pieces on her role as a working mother, published in the Huffington Post, Scary Mommy, the Los Angeles Times, and Chispa magazine. Despite the long list of accolades, she feels that her greatest accomplishments are her two daughters, Gabby and Mika. And finally, Carl Germann, Senior Manager of Content and PR at Monster. So after 2 decades managing editorial production and operations for some of the most iconic brands in the media world, including Vanity Fair, Martha Stewart Living, and Condé Nast Traveler, Carl made the switch to digital marketing and joined Monster Worldwide. He manages B2C content and PR for the Global Job Board and creates franchises intended to drive traffic and increase earned media around such content as Monster's Best Companies for Veterans, the Future of Work Global Report, and the monthly Monster Jobs Index. Carl lives in New York City with his husband and teenage daughter. And I'm Sean O'Neill, president at Onclusive. And for those of you who don't yet know Onclusive, we're the data science company for communications. Our software empowers PR and content teams to measure the business impact of their work across the entire consumer journey, including reader engagement, brand impact, and sales. And as someone who has been overseeing corporate marketing and communications efforts for the last 25 years, today's topic is near and dear to my heart. So during our time together today, we're going to review the reasons why working with a PR agency might make sense for your business, how an agency can contribute to your communication strategy, and what to look for when selecting an agency. And then, once you've hired one, How do you set your agency up for success and maintain an ongoing productive relationship with them? We will end with Q&A, so please submit your questions throughout the presentation. You don't have to wait till the end. By using the Zoom Q&A feature, and at the end, we'll address everyone's questions. Okay, so a PR agency is a communications consultancy. It serves as an external resource and ideally actually as an extension of your internal communications function. An agency can help your business by bringing in useful connections, helping you leverage best practices. They can generate fresh ideas. They can help you capture the bigger picture, right? Bringing that objective perspective of your brand or your industry, which sometimes can be challenging for your in-house team. That said, not every organization should hire a PR agency, right? If your company is a small startup, let's say, with a limited budget, you may first want to hire either a freelance consultant or maybe just an internal PR specialist, right? Someone who can help you build awareness and potentially source a PR agency in the future. Or if your company has very specific communications needs, such as deep product expertise, or let's say a niche B2B network in your sector, it may then be optimal for you to build an experienced and connected in-house team that is more integrated with the day-to-day operations of your business. Alternatively, hiring a PR agency may be a smart move when you have a clear business objective that calls for this type of investment, and of course, the resources to support it. Which is one of the biggest pitfalls to a PR agency's success, in my experience. In any event, a strong agency can help you shape a communications plan that'll contribute to your corporate objectives. Other reasons to work with a PR agency could be, the need for extra resources or particular area of expertise that may not exist in-house with your in-house team. Or maybe access to a larger network of journalists, right? When your company's own network and your own team's channels sort of reach the capacity. And of course, agencies basically tap you into a great network of talent, and they can help you differentiate in a very noisy marketplace. So let's first get the perspective of our client-side panelists today. So what are some of your company's reasons for working with a PR agency, as opposed to, say, strictly in-house communications teams? Carl, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. Sean, thanks for having me. Happy to be here, and yeah, happy to talk about this. Monster, is a legacy brand with strong brand awareness, but we're in a really competitive marketplace. The job board industry is very competitive, and so we also are a very small team. And so those two factors together mean we have limited resources and we need some expert help on differentiating ourselves in the marketplace. So that's why we really are relying on an outside agency as a really essential part of our overall comms team.
Makes sense. Oriana, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Carl, we're a small and nimble team. So I really rely on our agencies that we have as thought partners. I rely on them to see the opportunities and challenges that are currently in the market and to push us outside of our comfort zone to try new things. It's almost this outside in perspective. They're not weighed down by the company bureaucracy as much. And I want somebody to tell me if the campaign or the idea that I have is not going to work, quite honestly. I want an agency that's going to be able to push back on me. We are at a very different point in our company's history now than we were, say, 2 years ago, right? And there was a narrative 2 years ago leading up to our IPO and the fact that we were the second best performing IPO of 2019. But I need an agency that's going to carry us past that narrative and help us to figure out how we're going to communicate ourselves to the market, how we're going to gain that brand visibility, how we're going to establish ourselves as a unique company and what we offer our customer base. So really that, again, that thought partner, that outside in perspective, and an agency that pushes us outside of our comfort zones of what we've traditionally done.
Yeah, That makes a lot of sense. Bryan, as the agency representative on the panel here today, this is probably a question that you're quite used to answering. Give us, sort of your perspective here, and also, when you're talking to a prospective client who, let's say, may not have a lot of experience with an agency or could be looking at your agency as their first agency, what else would you say here? Like, what are some of the other key reasons why, it can benefit someone to have a partner on the agency side?
Yeah, totally. Um, for myself, I'm coming into the PR agency world a little bit as an outsider, so I haven't spent my entire career here. And honestly, I would ask those really hard questions. We live in a world now where there's so much information and technology and solutions available. You say things like, why would you hire a travel agent? Why would you hire an insurance broker? Even why would you hire a doctor? Right? Everyone's on WebMD these days, getting information that's not even the best case. But the reality is you really do have to ask that question, a hard question. And I think that, what Oriana, what Carla are saying, these are really important things that the agency should bring to the table, not just another set of hands to just do work for you and just be, an outsourced contractor, but they should be able to challenge. They should really understand the business. And most importantly, I think they should really bring a broad perspective. There's so much technology out there. Onclusive, one of my favorite companies to work with as well. But there's so much tech out there. PR has changed so dramatically in the last couple of years. There's solutions for every single problem around social media management, content management, publishing, reputation, crisis, influencer marketing. Your agency partner should understand all of those things inside and out. They should have a perspective on all of those competitors. They should have real life use cases of other clients using those vendors and what are good and what are bad about them. And even beyond that, I think what's really interesting is that in the last couple of years, we've seen clients say, hey, I want to know not just my industry, I want to see beyond my industry. We work with a number of healthcare clients that do work within a very heavily regulated environment. They can't do all the fun things that consumer brands can do, but they've come to us and they've said, what are those consumer brands doing? The ones that are putting Super Bowl commercials out there and they're talking about these really fun activations. What can we learn from them? How can we take their practices, adapt them within the regulated environment of healthcare, but then do something that is really kind of future forward?
Yeah, and just riffing off of what Bryan said, I think, we're a company that identifies more on the B2B side, B2B2C. And prior to this, I was at an airline, at Alaska Airlines. I think on the B2C side, there's traditionally this thought process that consumer companies have more fun, right? And are more creative in their communications and marketing strategies. I don't think that that is the case. And there's more of a vertical blending that I'm seeing in pulling from my past experience, but also relying on the agency, most importantly, who represents a wide scope of different clients where they can approach their clientele noting that, maybe something that one of my clients in the consumer industry did could work in the B2B side, right? And or thinking through their client roster to say, hey, we have this client over here that's looking at approaching a similar problem, a similar opportunity. There's an opportunity here to co-brand or co-approach a PR campaign. And I think those resources, looking to your agency to propose those ideas and the network effect of what they have at their disposal helps tremendously with clients, again, stepping outside of their own lane to think of what more could we be doing? What haven't we traditionally looked at? How is the pandemic served as an inflection point for us to get out of our own way, so to speak, and grab attention and visibility for ourselves?
Clearly a lot of compelling reasons, right? And I think a good segue here. So, there's a lot that an agency can do, right? At its core, PR is about influencing and engaging and building relationships, right, with various stakeholders across numerous platforms. The goal, of course, being to shape and frame the public perception of your organization, right? Or in other words, the main goal of PR is to boost the reputation of your brand. We'd love to actually get feedback from all of the participants of today's webinar. So here's a multiple choice poll asking which services your company prioritizes when seeking a PR agency. So please take the poll. We'll actually be publishing the anonymous survey results on our website in the coming weeks. So yeah, strong PR agency partner, they'll use a mix of various communication strategies and tactics, such as market research. They can do the media relations, content marketing. They can, get you booked at speaking engagements, help you understand your audiences. I mean, a very wide range of services, including policy decisions as well as key messaging, right? I think the first step, though, is to really gain clarity on what your company most needs from a PR consultancy, right? It's going to be a little bit different for every company. And, is it all of the above? Or is it very specific expertise in, let's say, just a few of these areas? I recommend first, review your corporate objectives, of course, and then your communications goals. Then make a list like this of key priorities. And then, of course, you're going to have to create a budget before going to the next step of selecting a PR agency to work with. But, looking at this list, there's a lot on here, right? A lot of different ways you might turn to a PR agency for their help. So yeah, let's again hear from Oriana and Carl first, who both manage PR agencies for their companies, on what are some of your needs, and how have you prioritized these needs when seeking a PR agency? So, Oriana, specifically, like, what are your priorities for your agency, and why?
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, all of these are priorities, and I think it's important to note that there's different moments in time in the evolution of your company in the storytelling methods, right? I pointed to the IPO that we had in 2019. Our needs were very different then than they are today because we're a different company post IPO. So ideally, what I look for is an agency that can bring that full breadth, depth, and scope of their capabilities to support us along our pathway and our journey in our company narrative. But I will say that, and I saw a question from one of the attendees asking if you have multiple agencies. We actually do have two agencies, one that's more traditionally focused on the business and technology outlets and the storytelling mechanisms through those. But another big part of our business is our accountants. And so we actually just went through a process of hiring a new agency, and I believe they're on the call. Shout out to Bliss Integrated Communications, who's coming on to support our agency side of the house, who really is helping us to step up our storytelling methods in that portion of our customer set. And they are coming at it from an approach of really creative, integrated storytelling hand in hand with our agency who's leading the business and technology side of the house. But ultimately, I think, again, you want an agency who can grow with you and can serve you at those different points in your company's growth.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in there because this list looks really familiar to me because we just went through, again, like Oriana said, a change of agency about a year ago. And so we went through and tried to figure out what do we need them to be doing and what can we handle in-house. And so we went through this and when we really narrowed it down, and then we settled on, when we partnered with the final agency, Mullen Low, we had a great plan in place with them. It was fantastic. We signed them on March 1st last year, ready to go. We were really going to be leading with them in media relations out of the gate and really helping to shape that for us. And COVID hit, and that changed the dynamic of the plan completely overnight. And we had to transition. So we got to be best friends because we had like about 2 weeks to figure out like how was this going to work, and then the priority became much more of like a strategy and advice, and we just pivoted right to that, and it was really a kind of a seamless transition for us, and it was really essential because like I said earlier, it's a competitive marketplace that we're in, and how are we differentiating ourselves in the middle of a pandemic where we were seeing, unemployment go from 3% to 10% in 30 days. That became really important. We really had to lean on our agency to help us shape that story.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Bryan, let's get again here the agency's perspective on this. So particularly, as you're courting each other, right? Like a new client that you're talking to, pitching for new business, they have their own ideas about, what are their correct priorities, and they're usually based on experience and their own research. But what are some of the other factors that they should be considering when setting your priorities? And the thing I'd be most curious to know here from your perspective is, how can the agency also sort of steer their client in a particular direction, right? If you feel like what they think their priority is may not actually be sort of in the most appropriate order, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we see so consistently across of our clients, big and small, is that PR in general has always been a little bit of this kind of playing second fiddle to kind of marketing, right? We even see it within Omnicom where, MSL is so much smaller than Starcom, let's say, that does all the media buying for a lot of our clients. We're at such an incredible inflection point right now. We're actually seeing with our clients, with some of the biggest clients in the world, their change in kind of attitude when it comes to the power of content, the power of PR. There's a list here of all of these things that a PR agency does. We certainly do it. We see our competitors offer it. They're in credit stacks all over the place. But the real power now is that we're starting to answer the questions that have always kind of plagued PR, right? Everyone always knows these are important things to do, but you can't measure it and you can't scale it. And now there is such a huge amount of data available, and the best agencies and the best brands and the best clients, what they're all thinking about is, how do all of these things tie together? How do we start to measure these things with the same level of sophistication that has honestly, quite honestly, been applied to digital media for a decade now? How do we take all of those things, make that the underlying influence engine for all of the different tactics that you have listed here? And how do we use that to drive forward both the value to the business on how these tactics deliver against that, but also really measure it in a way and quantify things in a way that you couldn't do before? We could start to say, this is the value of putting all of your money and your attention into creating compelling content. This is the risk to your business if we have all these negative comments and these crisis. This is what happens when people see these things, they read them, and they go and do something about it. And that's really the power that I think an agency can bring to them, is tying all of these things together, creating kind of that data layer, and then offering solutions that, again, are backed by data for our clients, but then also giving them a roadmap as to how they could start to kind of evolve their business and make them feel secure that there is a path forward and there's a way to kind of make sense of all of this new information that they have.
Yeah, Bryan, I think you're spot on when it comes to data, and it has something that has traditionally plagued PR professionals, right? And made a second fiddle, so to speak, to marketing. But I think the tool set that we have, obviously big kudos to Onclusive for their capabilities to demonstrate the power and share of voice and what those tangible numbers are, and looking at our owned and earned channels and how that traffic is coming back to the Bill.com website, going through the funnel to actually becoming closed customers, is a big thing that I had never had before this year, before Onclusive. And so I think instead of, the tried and true, just throwing out new opportunities or new ideas and seeing what sticks, now you can build the business case for your business case, right? When you're thinking of new campaign ideas, new ways of doing things, and testing it against how that is performing ultimately.
I like it. All right. So using data to set your goals and priorities. And once you've done that, that's the point where you can really start thinking about and researching, the PR firms in the market and the ones that can help you meet those objectives. I agree. You sort of have to have that baseline before you can even begin entertaining those conversations with a potential agency. Here are our recommendations on what to look for within a PR agency partner. So first, I'd say significant focus and expertise in your industry, right? So if you're in technology or CPG or financial services, whatever your industry is, make sure they understand your sector in depth. And I'd say similar to that is, current and past brand clients that are, related to your business. Be good to have, some history working within your sector with other clients that are like yours. You know, of course, you want to know they have the ability to get specific types of press, right? Key media contacts, for example, that you're looking for, maybe certain publications that you want to be featured in. What's their track record of success there? You know, I think very important to have strong cultural alignment. Can they find and, you know, quote unquote, get your voice, right? And are they leading the conversation there? And then related to that, just good personality fit, right? Yeah, you'll have an opportunity to get to know the account team you're going to work with, and you know, just make sure you like them, right? For starters. And then, you know, lastly, size and budget, of course. Ensure you know you're the right size for them, and that they're the right size for you, and you know that the pricing aligns with your budget. So this checklist can help you focus your research across different PR firms, and you know, hopefully help you create a short list of agencies you'd want to meet with. But before even contacting them, write down a list of very specific questions that'll help you evaluate the finalists, right? And asking the same questions of the same agencies gets you a structured set of data that can help you make a more informed decision. So now I'd like to hear from the panel on this. You know, can you give us an example of a time when maybe one of these objectives was, you know, maybe not in alignment, right? Maybe the relationship wasn't totally, you know, calibrated from the beginning. How did it affect the relationship long term? You know, Carl, you know, can you give us any examples here of maybe misalignment?
Sure. I think that for us, having gone through an agency switch recently, we came to that conclusion because there was a misalignment, and it was primarily a cultural misalignment. And we had you know, an executive team switch at Monster a few years ago, and we kept our agency on board as sort of in maintenance mode until the new team got in place. And then once we sort of settled in and we understood the direction that we wanted to go in with the brand, we realized that, oh, maybe our current agency isn't quite up to that task. And so we had to assess that and really evaluate that. And one of the things that we realized was that we got along so well with our creative agency. They've been with us for years. They understood our culture. They understood the brand. They understood our voice. And so through them, we were able to partner then with the PR division of that agency. It made it so much easier then, because that personality fit was sort of like figured out from the get-go. You know, and so it became much more about the culture, the personality. You know, what was coming after that, once we got that relationship going, then we could start to talk about, you know, the types of press we were looking for, and then how do we develop that expertise. But it was really about the relationship from the get-go. That was key for us.
Yeah, and I think to Carl's point, you know, something very similar, because we just went through process of bringing on, interviewing new agency for the accounting side of the house, which I had mentioned earlier. That agency that we had parted with had been with us for 6 years. And I think sometimes, I'm not saying all agencies, when you're with a client or a business for a long period of time, there becomes a baked in approach to status quo. And what we were doing 6 years ago doesn't fit what we need to do now. And so having an agency partner, again, to push you ahead, to set new goals and metrics, to recalibrate along the way, so that you can say, this is what's working, this is what's not. These are the goals that we had previously established. Do we need to increase those goals? Do we need to relook at, you know, what's behind those goals and why we are or not meeting them? I think is really important when you're looking for a new agency. I also think there's two other intangible factors. You talk about cultural alignment, but I think also in today's, you know, societal structure, we need to look at cultural ads. When we're looking at agencies, when we're looking at hiring internally, there's often a narrative around, do they fit our culture? I think it's important to look at candidates and agencies who can add to your culture, because culture is an ever breathing, ever evolving thing. And what your culture is today may not be your culture tomorrow, because of societal and political inflection points. And so you want somebody, again, who's going to add to your brand, who's going to bring a different perspective, who's going to ultimately evolve that brand over time. And that may not be somebody that you would traditionally think of, or an agency that you would traditionally think of, but again, pushes you outside. And then the second point is, and this is hard to test for, but an agency that has that gumption, that has that passion, that has that go-getter, can-do attitude, who doesn't just wait for the client to give direction on the roadmap, on those, planned company announcements, but helps you during the quiet period, so to speak, to continue to insert the company, continue to insert the brand in the marketplace, and use those quiet periods as creative moments, right, to show up. So yeah, that's really what I look for.
What's that famous Peter Drucker quote, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast"?
Yep.
Sort of rings true here, not to downplay the importance of strategy, right? Because there's some good quotes on the importance of strategy, but yeah, I mean, it's sort of the foundation here. Bryan, is there anything we've missed here, right? Anything else that belongs on this list? Or maybe do you feel certain factors here are more important than others when comes to your agency partnership?
I would say, the one thing that we see a lot from the agency side, I'm sure a lot of the brands see this as well, is you get to a point where you're not working well, and then there's a repitch. And then there's all kinds of energy being thrown at that repitch. I've been part of some of these repitches. I was called into one recently where it was a long time, 10+ year client, big trade association, brought in all these kind of new talent, new perspectives into the room to kind of talk about the future of PR and communications, all the bells and whistles they can get. And at the very end of the presentation, the CEO client stood up and he said, "This was amazing. We saw things today that we never saw before. And I have one question for you guys. Why did I never see this until now?" And the CEO of the agency on our side, I won't say who, got up and he said, "It's because it's your fault, because you never asked for it." And we all sat there and we said, "Yeah, we didn't save this one. We didn't win this one back. We almost did, but we didn't win this one back." And lo and behold, we didn't, right? And the thing that was so interesting about it was, you see that, right? You see where these agencies, and again, this was a different agency, we were helping them out, but they let those reputations go stale because they're not challenging on a consistent basis. And you get to the point where it could be either one of their faults, to be honest. It could be the agency, it could be the brand. But if there's not that ongoing kind of constant check-in as to where we are, how are we aligning, what are we doing, the agency should be pushing that. They should be scheduling those quarterly kind of innovation sessions where they're saying, what's next? Like, what are you guys seeing out there? And if it's not happening on the agency side, the brand should be kind of forcing that to happen. So you're constantly there because everything is changing so fast. Oriana's company went public. How different are they now than they were 2 years ago? I mean, these kinds of things are happening. And I think that constant alignment has to happen in that challenge, or else you are going to be in that repitch situation. And there's no winners there.
Great story. Would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that one. I think a good segue here as well to sort of this next line of discussion, right? After you've chosen the agency and you've got everything going, setting clear expectations about that exact level of support you need from them as your strategic partner, right? As well as what they need from you in order to deliver, which I've seen be a major breakdown so many times. It's really going to go a long way towards setting everyone up for success. We'd like to get all of the panelists' feedback on this topic as well here. So here's another multiple choice poll asking, what have been the biggest challenges in building your brand agency relationship? So yeah, please take this poll. We'll be publishing the anonymous survey results on our website in the coming weeks. So yeah, in the beginning of the relationship, right, when you're working with your new agency, you're going to want to spend a lot of time clarifying these expectations, educating them on your brand, your business, having extensive discussion around goals, deliverables, timelines are always important, right? Processes, and ultimately success metrics. And for me, I think one of the biggest opportunities today is to distinguish between outputs, like, the volume of media coverage that they're getting for you, to distinguish between that and outcomes, such as, measurable website traffic increases from that media coverage, for example. And then maintaining that ongoing productive relationship with the agency. I think Bryan hit on it, right? You've got to set up mutually agreed upon schedule for regular business reviews. You want to have communications strategy planning sessions, right? A really rigorous cadence for these types of communications, and it'll ensure, obviously, alignment is being maintained consistently around goals and processes and success metrics. But the other thing is having these regularly scheduled business meetings can help you move from being totally reactive, right? And a lot of what we do in public relations, there's a very reactive nature to a lot of it. And the more we can be thinking proactively, I think, the better. We had an interesting question come in, and I'm going to sort of just punt this out here, and then we'll continue to talk a little bit about this. But question came in from Kevin. Can you talk about some creative ways, and this is as a client, I think this is probably initially directed to Oriana and Carl, that you've kept your PR agency team motivated and engaged? We're in a great place with our agency, in parentheses, still the 6-month honeymoon period, and I don't want to lose that. Thanks for some ideas. So yeah, Oriana, Carl, I mean, other than just generally like making sure everyone's on the same page, after 6 months, Kevin's concerned, oh boy, this is going really well, but I want to keep them motivated. I don't want to lose any steam here. What are some best practices?
Yeah, actually something that we've been talking about that was thrown out by our chief revenue officer, because he oversees sales, and sales professionals are intrinsically motivated by money. I think we're all intrinsically motivated by money, but there's spot bonuses, there's different monetary factors involved with how many clients you close. And so similarly, he suggested, and it's something that we're going to start doing, is when our agencies exceed goals set, spot bonuses to reward them. And so if they can hit, our top 3 media targets with profile stories, you get XYZ amount of money, right? And I think that's a really nice way to recognize and reward agency performance that's going above and beyond the previously established goals.
That's an interesting approach. Mine's not so exciting in comparison.
Well, what's more exciting than financial incentives?
Right, exactly. Mine is, like I said, we sort of like, we onboarded Mullen and we jumped right into the fire of COVID. And so we went into this together, and we kind of strategized together. And now that the dust has settled a little bit, now we're taking a breather, and we're like, okay, let's take a look back. Where were our wins? Where were our failures? And how can we plan this together and work on this together and be a team? And one of the things that Oriana mentioned earlier is that like you have that gap in between maybe a product release or where you really have some business news to release. That's where my agency has been really great. They're like, okay, we have a gap. This is what we're thinking. And they've been challenging me, being like, well, what do you think of doing something like this? We had, we did a one-off earlier. It was quite successful, but then we sort of didn't pick it up again. I think we can go back and revisit that. And so there's a back and forth of sort of like both of us working in tandem and really challenging each other to think of like, let's think outside the box and expand this relationship, and keep growing.
One other thing, Carl, that I just thought of too, outside of monetary spot bonuses, if a company is exceeding the previously established metrics, guidelines, goal lines, whatever, their scope of work, another way to incentivize outside of, just spot bonuses is increasing their workload and increasing the scope of work in the company. Because that is another avenue to financial reward, right? But if a company is proving their worth time and time again, I think you can reevaluate what you're currently giving them and increasing that workload.
We love that.
No pushback there. So interesting, folks. We just got the results back from the second poll question. What's the biggest challenge when working in a PR agency brand relationship? the number one by a significant margin challenge is evolving business needs. I think that's fascinating, in that sometimes it's just the natural sort of organic evolution of the company and the brand and who they are and what they stand for and their values and their positioning over time. How do you guys maintain alignment there? Because you might hire an agency for a very clear assignment and expectations are perfectly aligned at the beginning. Everyone knows exactly, their marching orders and what the goals are. And then just look, business is dynamic, life is dynamic, right? How do you keep the agency, really moving forward with you, in lockstep as you just experience these natural, this natural evolution, and how do they adapt with you?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. And again, it's hard to measure or to know when you're going through an RFP or courting process, so to speak, but there's those intangible adaptability, elasticity. You look for a company or a partner that is nimble and has shown that adaptation for previous clients as their business needs have evolved through their customer case studies that they bring forward in the RFP process. But I think, again, it goes back to that constant communication and that recalibration. Similar to a direct report internally, you don't want to wait until the end of the year to have a review with them. And then all of the concrete constructive feedback that you have is a surprise. You want to meet with them along the way and give them guidance and feedback and direct commentary on performance, so that by the end of the year, when you're talking about performance, bonus, etc., it's not a surprise. And that's how I view agency partners too. If something goes awry, we need to recalibrate. If we need to reset expectations, I want to have those open, ongoing conversations. And I really view that agency partner as that internal, partner along the way.
Sean, I saw something interesting in the chat that I think is so related to this topic. And it was just a question of how do you suss out personality sooner during the pitch process? And it's really interesting because I think from the insider kind of side, from the agency side, is that when we're being asked to do things, right? Like even what Oriana just mentioned around the pitch process is it's like a love and hate type of process, right? You're kind of putting out this huge project. The agency is investing an enormous amount of resources. And because we're investing so much into it and they're not getting paid for that, they don't want to walk away empty-handed. So they're going to throw you the best people, the best process, all the bells and whistles. They're going to paint you an amazing picture. But is that going to be the reality a year later, right? And one of the things that I saw some of the clients do, especially some of the biggest clients that we have, right, when it comes to the amount of work that they're hiring for, they actually kind of treated the process a little bit different, where they had not just one big pitch, but they went into very clear detail into a number of different work streams and projects. And they really made it more of a working session around each of those versus having the agency go off, come back, do the whole show. And then they also interviewed every single person as if they were going to be an employee and spent time with them to understand their culture and their personality. Can they work with this person on a day in and a day out basis? And for me, it was really refreshing because it allowed us to really show the human side, really put forth the real solutions, talk it through as if we were going to work together in real life. Avoid a lot of the pitch theater and all of that goes in that with just the people showing up amazing and then you don't see them for 6 months, right? And I think very similar things can apply to evolving business needs, right? Because the agency, like you guys said earlier, everyone's going to always say yes to money. So you're going to get agencies that can say, I can take this on. But as a client, I think that you want to really kind of dig into, understand the new people that you have to bring in, meet them, spend time with them, test them, do some real projects, not just the pitch. And then really get to the bottom of, again, if you can make this work together. And I think that that's, a valuable way to kind of change this industry and how we kind of work together.
I think that's really interesting, Brian. It's something that I have never experienced on either inside agency or on the client side, but I think that's a great idea. And especially to your point, in the changing business landscape that we're all in, where you can't meet in person, right? And some of that body language or the intangibles that you would receive nonverbals from the pitch team in person aren't as well communicated virtually, right? Via your phone, via your screen, or what have you. And so those working sessions offer an opportunity to peel back the layer and really get to know the person and whether or not the team could be a fit.
Yeah, good thoughts here, folks. So as we sort of head in towards the final portion of the session here, let's just open it up a little bit, a little more of an open discussion. I want to ask a couple follow-on questions from everything we've discussed here, and then of course we can take additional questions directly from the attendees. One question here, maybe first for Oriana and Carl's. What's the right level of involvement for you to have with your agency's process? Meaning, how much freedom and autonomy do you give them versus like how closely do you involve yourself, and how much are you managing the fine details? I mean, obviously they're supposed to be an extension of your team, and it's a way to scale your work, but how hands off do you get versus like how much in the trenches are you with the agency? What's that right balance for you?
I mean, I think it comes down to trust. Trust is the intangible currency, right, of all partnerships. And so ultimately, it depends on if it's a new agency, an established agency, is it a new campaign, or something that we've done before. All of those factors factor into how involved I am. But I would say on the communication front, again, because I view our agency as an internal resource, I'm talking to them all the time. And because I'm a working mom, I try to adhere to the 9 to 5 as much as possible, but talking to them all the time can come via Slack, via phone, via text, what have you. And I think it's really important to have those regular touch bases because the business is changing hour by hour, day by day. If I trust the agency, though, that they can accomplish what I want them to accomplish, I think coming in from the strategy standpoint, guiding them, but ultimately letting them execute is really important in continuing that trust factor all the way through.
How about yourself, Carl?
Yeah, I would say that for us was a little bit of a dance that we did as we got to know each other. And I will admit the Monster team likes to be super hands-on. And as we've built that trust with the agency, we have backed off a little bit because we recognize, okay, they know what we're after, they know our goals, they know our objectives, and they know how to execute on it. And so it's been, it's been, didn't happen overnight, but it's been a slow process. But also the communication is key. I think I talk to my agency every day. In some way, shape, or form, either a text or an email or a phone call, and then we have very scheduled, twice a week, calls, like one with just me and then one with the VP of comms for the whole brand. So it's very structured in that sense. So nothing's going to fall through the cracks in that sense. But it also helps build that dialogue back and forth, and then we know what we can trust each other with.
Bryan, what's the perfect balance from your perspective? Do you need your clients to sort of leave you alone a little bit more, get a little bit out of your hair, or do you actually want them to be a little bit more hands-on and involved?
I mean, honestly, it's kind of what I said earlier about there's such an amazing opportunity right now for PR and for communications. And we want our clients we want to make them stars. We want them to take advantage of all of that's going on. And in the relationships where we work so close with them to knock down walls, even within their own organization, to get access to market research, to get access to data, to get access to advertising spends, to all kinds of things. And, I know that sounds very consumery. That also applies on a corporate side as well. But when we're working together in that fashion, we've done some amazing pilots with some of our clients that have really changed the perception of how their entire organizations think about communications. And we want to be that is the most exciting thing for an agency partner, right? Not just to kind of do the status quo work, but to help our clients be superstars in the industry and do pilots and do experimental things. And if we can partner in that way, and like I said, help knock down walls internally and also bring them great insights from the outside, that is the most rewarding kind of relationship. And that's what agency people, they crave that.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So folks, we're in the final few moments here. I'm just going to ask one more question across the panelists, and I think one of the most important, which is, which communications KPIs do you measure? Like, what are your key performance measures, and why are they your key performance measures, right? And to the extent you can even sort of talk about, like, any differences between metrics you focus on for, let's say, the C-suite versus other constituents. So Carl, what's sort of the top one or two metrics you guys sort of live and die by?
Yeah, so for reporting to the C-suite, we're still reporting our placements and our impressions, and those are the numbers that are easily translated to the executive team, and we can explain that in in a very easy way. More granular, we are focusing on our share of voice, and that's where and we are working closely with Onclusive on that, on tracking that and making sure that that is something that we're all aware of, and that it's a story that we can then translate easily to the executive team. And so it's a great one for our agency to track as well, because it gives that balance of, like, yeah, we're getting the impressions, but how are we shaping this whole campaign in the right way? And so that's really essential to us, is that share of voice.
Oriana.
Yeah, no, I mean, similar to Carl, without Onclusive, I don't know how I would do this, because we didn't have Onclusive at my previous company, but share of voice, power of voice, and then what Onclusive has done amazingly for Bill.com is connected with our marketing analytics team to build a pathway inside Bill.com so that we can accurately track traffic from earned media to the website and through the funnel, resulting in closed ones, and then reporting that back in terms of campaign efforts to the C-suite of what's worked and how we've actually contributed to Bill.com's potential power. And then on top of that, for our social media, we've just recently rolled out that internal pathway, analytics pathway too, and understanding our own channels, but also the earned recognition that we're getting through various, the various social media network, how that traffic is coming through too, and again, resulting through the funnel. But something else that I think is really important outside of those data points is looking at message pull through. So if you have, top 3 messages that you want to make sure consistently come through on your earned media coverage, doing an analysis, maybe message 1 is worth 5 points, message 2 is worth 10, message 3 is worth 15. And then on a grading scale, looking at what outlets, media outlets you're showing up in, is it your top 10, how you grade those on the point system, and then the message pull through. So having almost your own data report on how you're meeting those media outlets that you want to show up in, and ensuring that your message pull through is there.
Those are amazing examples of very client-specific metrics. Bryan, MSL, one of the biggest, I think, top 2 or 3, communications agencies. You guys have clients in every vertical, every size. So obviously, not probably going to be quite as succinct an answer for yourself, but you personally, like, what are the things that are like the absolute go-to, tried and true KPIs for the modern day communicator?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, really the things that Carl and Oriana said, and Oriana, it's amazing that you guys are doing that, right? I mean, there's just so much now available when it comes to elevating communications to be on par, if not more important than marketing in today's world, where we struggle with advertising, we struggle with attention. These are things that people choose to spend their time on. It's welcome content. We have an enormous amount of influence right now, and everything across the board is changing on how we start to measure and attribute the value of that content. And I think that really, to both of their points, what we do is we look across the board. We can certainly do things like attribution now. We could do real readership. We could do time spent. We could understand how people discover content. We can measure reputation in ways that are not previously available through machine learning and AI. But really, again, how do we make it custom for that particular client so it rolls up to their business goals? How do we bring a solution that is comprehensive and we give a full understanding of what are the pros and cons of all the different tools and platforms that are available in the marketplace? And then to Carl's point, how do we then distill that down into a report that, you know, the C-suite will want to consume, right? Like something that isn't going to be overwhelming, that has 700 pages of data on it, but is just 2 or 3 top KPIs that they can look at and they can say, we're doing better this month and we're achieving something. So I think that a good agency partner brings that level of detail and that scope, and really helps kind of that journey. And honestly, it sounds like Oriana and Carl are already doing that. Amazing. So, but that's what I would look for in an agency partner.
I like it. So that sort of wraps up the open questions and panelist section here. Just final thoughts here from the panelists. 60 seconds or less. How do you want to sort of leave the attendees here in terms of building a great relationship between the brand and the agency? So Carl, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I would say that. Like I said, it's a bit of a dance, but I think that as long as you're willing to sort of find that cultural fit and then build on that and keep building that culture and let the agency lead every once in a while, and then you lead and go back and forth. And I think that's, it's a relationship, and you just need to cultivate it and keep working on it. So that's going to be key to it.
Great. Oriana.
Yeah, I would just say it's an exciting time in PR. Find a partner who matches or exceeds your passion, your enthusiasm, your creativity. And building off of Carl's dance example, want somebody who can adjust, adapt, depending on what music is playing. Sometimes you're on a waltz, sometimes you're a salsa, right? You want somebody who's going to keep the movement and keep the motion with you and keep you in lockstep together. So.
I would just say for the brands, yell at us more, be direct.
Remember you said that.
This was recorded.
Best intentions. I mean, it's just like if you have a boss, right? If you don't know if you're pleasing your boss or not, I mean, how can you be better at your job? And a lot of our clients are afraid to kind of say, well, we don't like this and we don't think this is going to work, and they don't challenge us in that way. So we're left guessing what the right solution is for them and how we can bring better value. So that's honestly, I would say, yell at us more, tell us exactly if you don't like something, and let us fix that.
Good. All right. Well, folks, thanks everyone for joining us, and much appreciation for our panelists for sharing their experiences and wisdom and best practices. Definitely a lot here to learn from. Just a reminder, we'll be distributing the recording of this webinar to all of the registrations in the next 24 hours or so. And if you have any other questions, and of course, if you want to learn more about Onclusive, just email us at info@onclusive.com. So thanks again and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.